discover a problem. You don't get to create it. The creative stuff comes with the solution and comes with the way you differentiate yourself.
Robbie, thanks so much for coming on the show. We're going to talk about brand. You're in here from StoryCube, and the reason we want to talk about brand is because a lot of people, it doesn't make sense to them the way it comes out of their mouth as such, right? But they know what it is up here, but they're not getting the point across. So you guys have put a company together where it's going to help startups or other brands, other companies actually define their brand.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Any organization really. And
so I got that right, did I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's interesting the way you put it. My background, it's sort of coming to this, and my co-founder Michael as well. I worked in agencies for years, creative agencies, marketing agencies, and that very specific skill of how do you condense lots of information, a really complex idea, this sort of clever concept, how do you condense that into one place is really what I did. You know, that's what people would come to, because it is a challenge, you know, it's a challenge for huge organizations and new organizations. And so StoryCube is our attempt. Well, it's been quite successful so far, but still certainly our attempt, always a work in progress.
How long are you doing it, by the way?
Sorry?
How long is the company
How
going?
long? So the germ of it was January last year.
January last year, okay, all right.
Really started. So the kind of the story goes that I left the sort of busy world of 9 to 5 working for other people about 3 years ago, and decided, what am I going to do?
You work from 9 till midnight now.
Well, and the rest. I've also got a 15-month-old, so it's a sort of round-the-clock, non-stop jamboree in our house, and my wife runs her own business as well, so it's great. It's all good fun. But yeah, I decided, what can I do that would use some of the skills I'd picked up working with the PlayStations and Microsofts and these big kind of companies, and apply it where I could kind of see there were gaps. And Michael, must I say, my co-founder, felt the same, and he'd been running his own agency for years and years. And I'd actually employed him many years ago to work with his agency. And so we got together, had a coffee, and thought, something we're both struggling with is a lot of consultancy coming up. People coming to us and exactly what you described. They're like, we know what we do. When we can kind of go through it in a long time, where people use our product or they go through the service, they understand, they get it and they understand it.
Yeah.
But we struggle to get it across in 30 seconds or a minute or in a pitch deck or on a website. So we started talking about how we could help with that. And the early germ for this, as I say, January last year, we started doing workshops with the British Library at their Business IP Centre, which is an amazing resource. And the workshops we started doing there, slowly we were like, hold on, if we refine this, and I mean, it's hilarious to look back at what we did in some ways, because the sort of quick, fast improvement of working with stuff is so fun to do, whether it's any kind of product, but it was great to see it come to life with this. We've honed that down into the StoryCube, which is what we've got today. So 6 questions. If you can answer those, we believe you can explain what you do nice and succinctly, and people will get it.
Because a lot of companies struggle with this.
Yeah.
That, like, especially when it comes to, say, sales, right? Like, I know with us, when it comes to obviously sponsorship, to sponsoring the show, and you don't want to ring up, hey, we've got a chat show. This is what we do, and would you like to sponsor the show? Yeah. Where that's not going to sell to anyone. Where if you're actually able to get it across, you don't just help with the delivery, you actually help with a presentation delivery as well, is it?
So what we do is the StoryCube as a sort of concept, and I'll do the sort of creative bit, the bit where I get all excited about. I mean, the idea came to say, how do you give people a real foundation to kind of build everything on top of, which is why it's a cube, right?
Yeah.
So we literally actually do get people to make a cube. Do you remember at school, I don't know if I did that, you sort of cut it out, a little paper, put it together, and actually put together this thing that they can hold in their hand and make tangible, because that's part of the issue, I think, a lot of the time, is that you sort of have this gut feeling like, I kind of know what we do and I kind of understand what I want to say about it, but actually making it real, making it physical, helps to go, oh, it's not that scary, for one, but also to kind of see all the constituent parts. So which are, by the way, because cube, 6 sides, 6 questions, motivations, why do you do what you do, what problem do you solve, what solution do you have to that problem?
So these are the questions you get them to answer.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are your connections, which is basically our shorthand for who are your audience and how do you actually find them and connect with them? What are your differentiators, what sets you apart, and what are your obstacles? What's going to stop you and how do you deal with that?
Why do you think that there's such a problem with people being able to communicate what they do?
Well, I think generally people have different skills, right? And when you start a business, it's not necessarily because you come from a marketing background. It might be, or from a sales background. It's ideally because you've recognized a problem and you want to solve it. And that's always going to be the heart of every story and every pitch, right? Why do you do what you do? and what is this problem you're solving for people. So when people come to it, I think because you've got cash flow to worry about and you're trying to pay your bills and whatever is even beyond the business, like forget about cash flow, pay your own personal bills. But you've also got to think about operations. Maybe you've got staff coming on. There might be legal issues. The political scenario is not exactly fantastic. You know, all of those different situations. In a funny kind of way, it can feel that, you know, explaining what you do is like, well, what can I get? It'll be fine. It'll be fine because we make an app or we run a chat show or
people will get it.
You know, sell crisps or whatever it might be. Yeah, and they'll get it. But the problem you're always going to come up against is unless you really do have a piece of IP where you can say, we've invented a cure for disease X and that's what it does, and people go, well, that's excellent. And does it work? Yes, here's the document. And they go, well, we'll buy that then because, you know, and that's the easiest thing in the world. Generally, you're saying, okay, well, we've come up with a new dating app. Okay, well, why is that interesting? All right, okay, well, we think it's interesting because, but unless you get that across. So then you get into target audience, who are you talking to? And you get on to, you know, what you're trying to get out of that conversation. Because if it's a pitch, it's very different for investment, say. It's very different from a sales conversation at a market stall if you're selling food, which is very different from convincing your wife that you're going to give up your job and go and do something else. So I think having a sort of a framework to put that to is a bit of a safety net for people because, as I say, they've not necessarily dealt with this in a way that is going to be as easy for the people listening as before. Because, you know, what it's like, you speak to hundreds of different startups, right? And if you are taking presentations for people, if you're an investor or you're even just at a Christmas market and you're walking around looking at stuff, you're listening to a lot of people telling you a lot of stuff. It's got to cut through and it's got to be easy and simple.
I think the biggest problem that I find that startups have, especially when it comes to brand and describing what they do, is when it comes to funding, right? Because they're up there, they're looking for funding and they're presenting to these VCs or angel investors. And if they don't get their attention immediately and get their point across, they've lost the interest of the investors. Yeah. Have you been able, is that another thing that you guys are able to focus on and zone in on?
So the way that StoryCube works is we take people through, and this exists as an online course, it exists in various workshops and different kind of, we do coaching and things like that as well.
I've signed up for the online one.
Fantastic, we'll see you on there. And the idea is very much to give people the building blocks. So to say, if you answer these 6 questions, and then there's a number of exercises that we've worked tirelessly on to kind of, you know, create things that actually allow you to answer that. Because it's all very well and good saying to someone, yeah, and then just pop down what problem you solve. But actually, part of what we're trying to do is say, why is this important? What's the purpose of this, of telling people this? And how do we, in fact, through StoryCube, ask some of the right questions to elicit the right answers? But once you've got these kind of 6 pieces, it's a bit like being an impressionist painter or something, right? You've got to learn to draw properly and get the basics right and go, right, this is a horse and it's got a head and 4 legs, before you can be a Picasso or a Monet or whatever, because you need to learn the rules and the basics. But what we aim to do is give people that structure so they can at least go into somewhere and say, okay, hi, I'm Robbie. You know, this is the problem we solve and this is the solution that solves it. We're motivated by this, and what sets us apart is this. And actually, then if there's more questions, you've thought about other stuff that goes behind all of that to dig into it. But generally, if you can communicate clearly the problem that you solve and the solution and why you're different from everything else that's on the market, you're almost always going to be in a pretty good place. The difficulty comes, I think, when it depends what level you're at. Because if you are, for example, selling food in a market, you know, you've got a quick reaction to people. But if you are a high street bank, or a challenger bank indeed coming in, there's a lot more money being spent, there's a lot more visibility that's there, there's a lot more on the line basically, so the detail becomes a bit more. And of course, from a branding point of view, that is when look and feel, tone of voice and everything comes into. But again, for us with StoryCube, you get that platform right, you start to layer those things on top.
Before we end, right, what are the most common mistakes you see people making?
I think the most common mistake is coming up with a problem, not discovering a problem.
I get you,
I think to sit at the heart of it. It's what I often refer to when we do talks and stuff as the Dragon's Den issue. You know, people walk in, they've remortgaged their house and they've done all of this crazy stuff. Yeah. And actually it's like, so how many customers have you got? You know, what's the market for this?
Well,
And they're
none
like,
yet.
well, we're not sure, and we're struggling to do, and we've got a warehouse full of widgets somewhere. And actually, we always say to people, and through StoryCube, we say, you know, you discover a problem. You don't get to create it. The creative stuff comes with the solution and comes with the way you differentiate yourself. But you need to base it on a real world issue that enough people have to make it a viable business. And again, once you've got that at the heart, the funny thing is that sounds like dry and analytical, and it's research led, and we push all of that stuff. But of course, the sort of deep breath you can take at the end of it to be like, okay, now we've been really clear on that. We know who the people are who want that, and we've got a really focused pitch. So it makes sense.
You've got a discount for our viewers, do you?
Absolutely. If you're interested, go to storycube.co.uk, and if you put in Startup Van, or one word, you'll get 50% off the essential course, which is, you'll see what that is. When you
Nice.
But that's
nice.
basically
50% off?
50% off. Well, you know, we're really, a big part of why we're doing this is to get people to not worry about this stuff if it's not what they do generally, to get teams on board at bigger organizations being able to use this thinking effectively, and just go from there. So we want to get it out there, build it, develop it, and one day there'll be no discounts, because, you know.
I feel under pressure now that the Startup Van audience have to sign up to this, because our necks are on the line. You know, they're going to be measuring this. But look, if you do want this, guys, I said 50% off. Thank you, Robbie, for coming on.
Not at all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.